Hello everybody! So, Challenge League playoffs start today. You know what that means? New Jerry video! This one's going to be a little different. I haven't put together a proper video. I didn't really have the motivation or the justification to script and edit and do a fully fledged video for the next stage of Challenger League. But it's now 5:25 on a Sunday evening, and I thought, why the hell not? We're at a very significant juncture in this iteration of Challenger League, so I thought I can't just skip out and not make a video. So in a deliberate effort to make less effort, this is going to be entirely unscripted and is basically a Jerry reacts to Jerry video. A few weeks ago, I made some predictions for the group stages where we had 16 teams whittled down to 8. And I want to take a look at those and laugh at myself. So let's get going. All right.
Following in the footsteps of Moses and Ed Miliband, I've carved my predictions into the stony surface of the Twitter timeline. So feel free to at me when I'm hideously wrong.
Okay, I wasn't hideously wrong there. For the most part, there's a couple of glaring errors though. So, I mean, Group B, that's my pride and glory. Like Death Row, Land Party Hotel, 1 and 2, bang on. C, the same, Wild and Ascend, 1 and 2. I get the 3rd and 4th seeds in each of those groups the wrong way around, so I don't have any perfect groups.
With some luck and form, they could be genuine challenges for top spot overall.
Oh god. That didn't age well. Oh dear. Okay, so Victus, this is a good place to start. What happened? Honestly, that was a disappointing show from Victus. It was sad because we knew that they had that potential, and I think a lot of this video is going to be me crying over MPL. We spent a lot of time during this season gloating about the fact that we had 2 spots in Challenger League over every other Nationals League that only had 1, and we've blown it. I mean, it rests on 10-star. Victus, M&M Academy, Viperio 86, and Job Seekers all dunked out in groups. Yeah, that's not great.
Consistently high performing, with the cheeky added benefit of very little VOD availability.
So Viali Petoni ended up topping the group on round difference, despite the fact that Jailings won more games. That's what overtime points do to you, I suppose. Yeah, I honestly rate them. I think that they're probably going to go quite far. They look like a very strong side, and honestly, when it comes to best of 3s, we don't know much about them, so that VOD availability thing might be even more pertinent.
Jailings, another team we rarely see at full strength, but I think the Flying V's above will outclass them.
See, they absolutely smashed Victus. They genuinely did. Jailings, to their credit, did do quite well with the hand they were dealt, but I feel as though this group was more about Victus and Rebels underperforming than about Jailings really stepping up. I'm still skeptical about their ability when it comes to best of 3s. They managed to produce 3 top 8 finishes across the Challenger League Open qualifiers, basically meaning that they were able to win maybe 1 best of 3 each time and then fumbled on the second one. I just don't trust them, especially after their Benelux finals performance, to have the bottle. When we get to my predictions for playoffs, then I'll maybe have a bit more to say on that one.
They could win it all, but will probably not. Prove me wrong, Spain. Now,
see, that was the thing, is that we had no idea. Rebels is quite funny because their first game against Victus, everyone was coming out and saying they are the team. Watch out for this side, like they're insane. And I saw that game and I was just like, no, Victus made them look good. They end up finishing beneath Victus, and that was the only game that Rebels won. So at least I was right on that count. And Spain, I'm sorry, but even if you have a team that come into groups with a flawless record from the national scene, it's still only the Spanish national scene. I'm sorry to say it. There needs to maybe be a merger on the horizon. If this is the best that Spain can produce, I feel like Spain as a region would benefit more from merging with another in the same vein as V4 and MPL and even GSA. So the Spanish nationals, which is actually technically Iberia because it's Spain and Portugal, if I've got that right, it's still just too weak a pool of players. I mean, even if you have amazing individuals like Fosquito, Karibo, Goga, they did show up. It's just not enough to compete with the mixed rosters of Jailings even, Victus. Unlimited just proved that they were a fantastic side overall. The Russian pool has always been strong. But yeah, this group was Unpredictable in the sense that I didn't think Jailings would come through as strong as they did.
Now Group B. There are some suggestions that this group may be the easy route to playoffs. This is what happens when you have such a complicated sourcing system that means it's impossible to seed properly. It does, though, make this group the most unpredictable in my opinion.
And then I go ahead and predict exactly who's going through in what order. Well, I mean, it just happens sometimes. I just big brain it.
Lamb Party Hotel, previously Necro Raisers. These are my second choice pick, based almost solely on gut feeling.
I'm so proud of this because they were such a wild card and they finished exactly where I've put them now. Shout out to Grun and Hunt, ECS represent. So just a bit of a slip up from Lamparty Hotel in the final days. They were leading this group convincingly, and then their second weekend they had an overtime win, an overtime loss, and an outright loss. So they definitely tapered off a little bit in this group, but there's just something about this side that makes me think they're going to do much better in best of threes, and I can't put my finger on it.
Ovation. Sure, they finished top 4 in qualifier 3, but their route was exceptionally easy.
Yeah, Ovation finished with 1 point. What else can you say? This was supposed to be the easy group, you know? Unfortunate.
Group C now, and this has definite group of death vibes. Wild.
This was the group of death, but it was mostly just the group of NPL death. And I predicted it would happen. Admittedly, these predictions were before we got news that Hungary would be going on holiday. And that maybe impacted the seeding somewhat. But the surprise here is just how good Job Seekers or ex-Coalesce were. Like, they truly gave Wild and Ascend a run for their money, and it came down to the final day. So that was really impressive from Nixon and the lads. But it's the result we expected overall in this group, just not necessarily the route we expected.
In most people's books, they and Tenstar are the true title contenders.
Now, that's the thing about Wild, is that they really didn't seem like world beaters in this group. You know, Job Seekers beat them. It was a much more muted showing than we were expecting from Wild, and maybe they decide that they want to turn up when it's the best of threes, when it matters more, when there's higher stakes, when you've got less room for error. But there were definitely rounds and even games where it looked like they were throwing. They brought in a full no ban at one point. I was having Helios flashbacks. I can't relive those days again, Wild. Do not do this to me. Do not do it to Demo.
Ascend, previously 3-2-1 Sked, are not just a Licky Fact team.
I'm glad I called this. I'm so glad I called this, because there are so many people that were just saying that they're nothing without Licky Fact. And honestly, they looked like probably the strongest team in the group, weirdly. The most consistent. When you look at the fact that they got 3 regulation wins when Wild only had 2 to qualify at the top of their table, they're a solid side. I still think this team represents the best chance for France, even over Death Row.
They're good enough to have made it out of Group B, but they've drawn the short straw. Considering their inclusion in groups is a surprise, they have nothing to lose.
Job Seekers did so damn well. They were like riding the MPL high for the longest time. They were the ones that were the flag bearers for MPL, while Group D looked like an absolute mess and Victus were having a hard time. They were the ones top of their group after still, I think, 4 games in. They were still top of their group. So it's just a shame that they fell off right towards the end when it mattered. And Viperio 86, oh my god, of all of the games to turn up and just play ranked strats, there's a kind of expectation almost that you support your nation and that teams will kind of help each other out to get through the group stage. Obviously, without flouting any sort of competitive integrity rules or anything like that. But of all the teams to stop Job Seekers from getting through, I still can't believe it's Viperio 86 on the final day, 7-2 win. Oh, just absolutely heartbreaking.
Group D, and it wouldn't be a Jerry video without some form of shitting on Italy.
Oh dear, I mean, dug my own grave here, didn't I?
Tenstar have only recorded losses to Wild and Heroic over the past 5 months, and even had...
Yeah, Tenstar had a bit of a rough groups, didn't they? So they started things off with a 7-1 loss to Makers and then an 8-6 loss to M&M Academy, their MPL rivals. And that was the point where we were like, hold on a sec, are Tenstar actually going to qualify, or are they going to be beaten to it by M&M Academy? M&M Academy looked so damn good, and honestly, it's saddening not to see them go through. Just this group was actually the group of death in the end. This was the one where we had a team in M&M Academy that showed up, and even Le Pichichi, who finished the group with, no wins. That does not do justice to how well they played. This was a stacked as hell group.
M&M Academy are the other informed side in the EU, finishing second place in qualifiers 2 and 3.
I'm glad that I called that M&M Academy would be a force to be reckoned with. I didn't expect them to outperform 10-star on day 2. That was the surprise factor for me.
And not making it out of Group C, I have Makers. I don't see this team outperforming M&M Academy. They have...
So Makers look really good. They have the most points out of anyone coming out of groups. And yet, I'm still hesitant to say that they will finish top. Let's go over Le Pichichi first.
And lastly, Les Pichichi, another team who didn't expect to be here, who find themselves in the deep end, and who genuinely could have had a shot at breaking through Group B. Oh well.
Yeah, that's pretty accurate, to be honest. They had such a good performance, and yet they only come out with 1 point. Not a fair representation of how good a side that was. Half of these teams, Job Seekers, M&M Academy, KVM, could probably have all made it out of Group B. Maybe even Group A as well. I don't rate Jailings. So overall, I got 6 out of the 8 teams correct, and Jailings and Makers were the 2 that surprised me and made it through. And I got the seeding of Group B and Group C correct as well in terms of the first 2 places. Done Limited finishing top of Group A in place of Victus certainly surprised me, but Victus just didn't show up. And then Makers showing that they are really not just an SI 2021 team. They've actually come back and they've done something. However, they did this last year. So I'm going to make my predictions now, but not in the form of a filled out bracket. I'm going to just present it as a rankings table. I don't think that Makers make it very far. Now you're probably looking at this list and thinking, why the hell are Makers 5th/6th? And that's a fair thing to say, because honestly they looked fantastic in the first few days of the group stage. But then the cracks started to show, and I just think that when it comes down to it, they are not a big game team. I look at this collection of teams, and I see 10-star and Wild stand out to me as teams that can turn up when it matters, and that is the biggest thing. Last year, Makers topped their CL group as well, and then they promptly made a very swift exit in the playoffs. Now, admittedly, they look a hell of a lot better this time around, and their group was a lot tougher too, but it's best of ones, and I just don't see them as the best of 3 side that you need to be to progress through these playoffs. I'm calling it right now. It's a gut decision. Flame me when it's over, and Makers have won the whole thing. Other than that, I think this is a relatively standard prediction. Jailings being quite far down may irk some people in terms of predictions, but similarly to Makers, I don't see them as a big game side. I think that they probably lose out when it comes to the best of 3 format. Death Row, I don't rate them highly enough. I feel like their group was a little bit weak. I should probably explain the overall philosophy of these rankings. I don't think that you can look too heavily into what is essentially 6 best of ones. Far more important than that for me is the quality of the gameplay and performance over best of 3s during this year, and especially in this stage and in the open qualifiers and various Nats League finals that led up to this. This is why I have 10-star and Wild up there really high. I know that they are big game teams. They can win best of 3s, they can win best of 5s, they can compete with the best teams in the world. Makers have not proved that to us yet. Unlimited were a mainstay of every single EU Challenger League open qualifier run, and their only reason for not going so far in the final one was because they were forced to play 4 versus 5. Their quality of gameplay in Group A was fantastic in best of 1s, and we've seen them win plenty of best of 3s in the past too. I think that they're a solid side, and they just deserve to be in that top 3 conversation. And then we get into the kind of gut feeling territory where I've got Land Party Hotel above Makers and Jailings, which some might disagree with. Again, I've also maybe irked the French community here by putting both Ascend and Death Row out before the top 4. I feel as though if I'm going to be wrong anywhere, it's there, and not necessarily the Makers and Jailing's calls. Honestly, it's really difficult, and I know a lot of people will look at this list and maybe put LAN Party Hotel or Dun Limited a lot further down. Another factor that I think is quite important here is adaptability. We saw that teams like TenStar and Wild, who were expected to do quite well, had a slow start and then ramped up once they gained more intel on their opponent's styles of play and the type of gameplay that they'd be dealing with. That factor applies in a much shorter space of time over a single best of 3 series. Adaptability is key. Perhaps you could argue on that philosophy that I should have Jailings who started slow and ramped up much higher than, say, LAN Party Hotel, who fell off towards the end of their group stage. But again, I'm looking not just at the groups, but at a longer term trend of performances and abilities in best of 3s as well. Funnily enough, Ascend managed to beat Death Row in a best of 3 only yesterday in the French 6 Open Cup. I didn't watch it, but I can only assume that they were both probably prioritizing Challenger League. One more thing I considered when making this list was that there's no LAN element to this, so it might have raised the ceiling of teams like Makers that have been in that LAN environment before. And then you could argue that Wild as well, who've been to Gamers 8 in Riyadh, and TenStar, who've been up north that one time, probably might have had a bit of an edge there. But I feel as though the quality gap is going to be a lot narrower in these games. So hopefully that produces a bunch of really tight matches. So the first 8 games of the Challenger League playoffs will be taking place over the next 2 weeks on Mondays and Thursday evenings. I'm certainly going to be watching very closely. And then, of course, we have a big break for the Yonkaping Major. I definitely said that wrong. Good luck, everyone that's out there. And I will then be tuning back into the rest of Challenger League, which all wraps up in a really intense 3-day period at the start of December. So that's going to be absolutely nuts. So thank you very much for watching this slightly different Jerry video. Next time, the normal meme-filled service will resume, and that might be before the major, after the major, before the rest of the playoffs. Who knows? We'll see. Anyway, thank you very much, and goodbye.